at your first conference since the mid-80s.
I know, late 80s. Yeah. Well, I'm here with GB News, but I'm also here because a lot of the things that I've campaigned about and spoken about for nearly 20 years are now being picked up by some Conservatives. What Suella Braverman said in her speech to the UN, I've been saying that for years and getting abused, so at least some of it's leaching into the mainstream, albeit, I suspect, she's still a minority in her own party. But Patrick, you put your finger on it. The elephant in the room here is immigration. And this is not just stopping the boats, it's legal net migration. It is the massive population rise that's going on. And I've been out here for the last 5 or 6 hours talking to party members and MPs and others, and they all know that exploding population means a housing crisis, you can't get a GP appointment, the roads are more blocked than ever, and nobody on that stage even wants to talk about. Oh, too scared.
Of what? Of winning an election?
Oh, being called nasty things by their mates in central London. You know, the Times editorial might be nasty to them. The Guardian might be beastly. The BBC might be even worse than they could be. Never underestimate the cowardice of people in elected politics and the desire to be part of a herd and the feeling that being in a herd gives you protection.
But you know, I would have thought, just having walked around here, talking to ordinary people, Conservative Party members, for goodness sake, I mean, they know what Conservative Party members by and large want, and they do want controls to legal immigration, and they want to stop the boats. And yet they're scared, do you think, to go on stage and say that?
They've been scared for years.
To an audience full of people who would stand up and applaud.
Yeah, but it is the social unacceptability of saying these things. And what's really interesting, in 13 years of Conservative government, the centre of gravity on these debates has shifted so far to the left, it's almost unbelievable. I mean, there were things that David Blunkett was saying as Home Secretary 20 years ago that would now be called with the BBC far right.
Yeah.
That is how far to the left we've gone. But it also reflects that the type of people in politics. Most of the MPs here are literally career politicians. It'll be the same next week at the Labour conference. They're in it for a career, not for the change they can bring or the conviction that they hold. And so the disconnect between the party and the active membership is huge.
Well, and we saw that, didn't we? Lord Cruddas last night came out and gave a barnstorming speech straight off the traps, teeing off, where he openly said that people should not be donating to the Conservative Party. They should be donating to the CDO, which is, you know, a membership grassroots organisation. That appears to be open warfare within the Conservative Party between, dare I say it, people who maybe are more closely politically aligned to you and, well, people in charge.
Oh, look, it's open warfare here. It's open warfare on HS2, it's open warfare on net zero, it's open warfare on migration, it's open warfare on Brexit. That hasn't gone away. And what we need to do with Brexit. It's open warfare on every single issue you can see, differing wings of the party. You know, Liz Truss's group this morning with their Trumpian-type slogans, the One Nation lot with Damien Green and the others, they're horribly split. But even those of a more conservative perspective, perfectly clear, Suella and Priti don't like each other very much. No. They're all over the place.
Right, now look, I heard you being interviewed earlier just in front of this stand. And I think they were asking you some questions. Are you coming back into politics or all of that stuff? But what you said was, just listen to me. Just listen to me. So, if Rishi Sunak is watching this now, then win him the election.
Oh, it can be done. It can be won. I mean, honestly, nobody outside the Conservative Party made a bigger contribution towards their 80-seat majority than I did. And I say that not wanting to appear big-headed or arrogant. I turned the Conservative Party from an anti-leave the EU to a pro-Brexit party. They may not have meant it, but that's what they said. I shifted that party almost single-handedly to a position that gave them an 80-seat majority. I've got a better sense of where the centre ground of majority public opinion is than virtually everybody, Rishi, in your party. So I know you're listening to me now, or beginning to, on net zero and other issues, but you've got to go one hell of a lot further than you've gone. You've got to convince people in your speech on Wednesday that you are the real deal, not just making reactive moves in response to opinion polls. It's a heck of a big ask. Can it be done? Well, stranger things have happened in history.
Do you think you will ever rejoin the Conservative Party?
I can't see it, Patrick. I think they're gone.
I think they'd have you now, I think.
Oh, if you ask this lot, you know, the delegates, who they'd vote for, I could become leader. But I'm not sure my leadership would ever let me in.
No, I mean, it would be fascinating. I mean, just from a journalistic point of view, it would be a fascinating thing to watch unfold. I mean, it would be tremendous.
But the middle upper class, white, overprivileged snobs who've never had a proper job in their lives would never want me in the party.
Do you think we've got a bigger disconnect than ever, Nigel, between the way that GBNews looks at the world potentially, and the way that, you know, Twitter, you mentioned some snobs there, you know, potentially other media outlets. A little bit later on in the show, I've got a clip from Priti Patel, I've also got a clip from Liz Truss talking about GBNews. You know, you talk about the disconnect between maybe the grassroots of the party and the Conservative Party, but what about the disconnect between, you know, us and maybe the media?
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, what you've seen over last week, and I was away last week, very good week to be away from GB News, whilst all the trouble was kicking off. But I mean, the Adam Boltons, we must be shut down. The Today programme, interviewing our chief executive as if it was Nuremberg.
Yeah.
I mean, the way the whole thing's been dealt with has been unbelievable. And I've been here before. When UKIP was rising and challenging, we were demonised, we should be defunded, closed down, put in prison, God knows what. And the same's happening to GB News. What you'll notice here is the love for GB News amongst so many of these delegates and members of Parliament and former cabinet ministers that are here. So I think we are now a very established media brand, especially with this group of people. You know what? It's not a bad thing.
No, absolutely. Just very quickly, very finally, Nigel, you're doing a show here. What's on?
Well, sadly, at 7 o'clock, the punters will all have gone. It's going to be me in an empty hall, which will look terrible. And the Guardian will say no one turned up. But never mind. We're going to have Lord Frost on, just to talk about the state of the party. We're going to have Miriam Cates on.
Good.
To talk about what's going on in our schools. And I will give my take on what I've seen over the last 48 hours here. I can't believe this party has ever been more divided than ever before. They're headed for defeat, but the real debate and battle that's going on here is what comes next.
What comes next? It's interesting you say they're headed for defeat, because I'm going to be having a little conversation later on. I don't disagree with you at all about how divided this party is. I think it's a depressing thing for British politics in general that they are not necessarily heading for defeat, because what does that say about the alternative?
Well, you're right. I mean, you know, many would say that Labour aren't very inspiring, but it's still going to be defeat.
Yeah.